coming to us from Singapore. We're going to be speaking with Twitter's Rishi Jaitley. He is in charge of Asia Pacific and the Middle East and Africa. He's got half of the world, more chunks of the world than ever. And he's also a friend of mine. Rishi, please, are you there?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Maria?
I can hear you. I can hear you,
Great.
Rishi. Nice to see you again. Rishi Jaitley, you're in Singapore, right?
I'm in Singapore. It's great to be back with you again. Missing Manila. Hope to be back there soon, but I am in Singapore at the moment.
Well, we hope to see you here soon. Why don't you tell us what you're seeing? So Twitter has played a great role in the Philippine elections. What are the top lines that you've seen?
Well, at a top line, I think you're right, Maria. This is definitively the first Twitter election we've seen in the Philippines. I mean, we haven't seen anything at this scale in a long time. We look at a lot of elections, Maria, as you might imagine, in recent years. And at a top level, there are a few things I see. One, people power. I haven't seen an election where citizens and ordinary citizens and voters have used Twitter and social media to participate in a big way. And the tweet volumes, 35 million overall, 5 million the other day, all suggest that. Of course, we saw news organizations, including Rappler, use Twitter to break news and publish videos. And then finally, I think I would say democracy and openness and transparency, right? You've referenced the voter turnout. We've done a lot of work with Comelec, a lot of irregularities being reported on Twitter. So lots of distinctive things I'm picking up from the Philippines, particularly around people power, particularly around live and video, and particularly around this idea of a more open, transparent, inclusive election.
What can you tell us more about what the people power, and do you have any numbers to show us in terms of how large exactly, how engaged were Filipinos on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, well, you look at the country, I think there are about 50 million registered voters. We observe about 48 million are on social media.
Wow,
think if I had,
that's great.
And during the election from the beginning of the year, we've seen 35 million election-related tweets since the start of the year. That is an astonishing number. That is all public expression. And what's interesting, Maria, and I think you guys have a chart with the world map. One of the things we've seen is the world has been tweeting. It's not just the Philippines. And you just referenced, of course, the overseas vote. But we're seeing tweets from the United States, from Europe, from the Middle East, where I was yesterday, and the election was big news, and of course across Southeast Asia. We've also seen that tweets about Duterte, he has dominated mentions both in aggregate and also that on election day itself. At about 7:30 p.m. on election day, we saw tweets about the election spike. But what's really cool, Maria, for those of us who care about kind of the mission that the internet affords all of us, it's tweets from ordinary citizens that are some of the most retweeted. Young people who are tweeting pictures of themselves or interesting infographics, or bands that are tweeting, or humor, right? When the debate was delayed, there was this hashtag Durium. I think one of the things we're seeing in the Philippines more than other countries is bottoms up sort of culture, conversation, personality is loud and clear. And I'm not surprised knowing the Philippines.
That's incredible. Rishi, we actually have the map up, the global map where the Twitter conversations are going on. Could you give us an idea? So the majority of it was still coming from the Philippines.
That's right. The majority was still coming from the Philippines, but I think the places to take note, first and foremost, the Middle East. There is, of course, a big expatriate population in the UAE and other countries. I myself spent a lot of time there with Twitter, and the conversation volumes have been striking. I think also the United States, of course, there's a big diaspora in the United States, and it's not surprising to see the conversation. I think one of the things Twitter has done is helped the world take note of this recent spate of elections. You and I were just talking about this in Southeast Asia and Asia in general. And so this map, I think, is a powerful illustration of this was a global moment and still is a global moment as much as it is a national moment in the Philippines.
Fantastic. And what again was interesting about it was when you said that there are 35 million conversations, there are 54.4 million registered voters, but 81% of them came out to vote. And it looks like with the kind of engagement there was on Twitter as well, we were able to, I know that you had a hashtag hashtag PH vote with us, right? Where people, after
That's
they
right.
voted, used it. Do you have an idea how many times or how many people used it?
Well, what we do know is, excuse me, what we do know is that, 10% of conversation, 10% of the overall conversation happened on election day itself. 4 million tweets in one day. Again, we may be used to kind of these big numbers, particularly given how the Philippines has embraced social media. But when you take a step back and look at other countries, those are extraordinary numbers. I mean, during the presidential and vice presidential debates alone, we saw 5 million tweets combined. Rappler, you all have actually have innovated in extraordinary ways on the platform, not only with the hundreds of live videos we've seen from Rappler, the emojis, of course, which you guys supported. In many ways, this election represents, I think, the collective personality and purpose of the Philippines, and the data with mentions of candidates also illustrates that as well.
What role do you see Twitter playing now as the votes are being counted?
It's not explicitly our business and role. A lot of people ask us, well, can Twitter be predictive? Does Twitter data matter in elections context? I do think that in a country like the Philippines, we are an interesting sample size. We did see that, Duterte has been leading the conversation with 40% of all mentions, presidential candidate mentions, have been of him, almost as much as the next two candidates. And I think looking ahead, we're obviously, as we move from Twitter for elections to Twitter in a governance context, there are all kinds of ways Twitter can be used, whether it's in the context of, he's spoken a lot about law and order. We see a lot of police organizations around the world using Twitter in really creative ways to engage citizens, whether it's our continuing work with the Election Commission, whether it's disaster relief and more. There are all kinds of ways in which to build on this momentum in the Philippines and ensure Twitter is used in a governance context in a powerful way as well. And we look forward to that opportunity in the coming months.
Well, what's interesting is you mentioned earlier that you're seeing a bottom-up approach, and that kind of bottom-up approach, strangely enough, I do think that social media played a role in getting a Duterte president, because we first saw his rise and his support on social media. So what kind of impact do you see this having on democracies, not just in the Philippines, but around the world?
I think, a couple of things. One, it's giving, the unique attribute of Twitter, of course, is that we're public, and tweets travel. Tweets travel far and wide. And what that does is that it gives both candidates and participants alike unique power to use Twitter to shape the public conversation. And I'm sure you can think of examples during this election cycle where a conversation born on Twitter, became mainstream. In fact, in our work with the COMELEC, they were encouraging people to tweet about voting irregularities, and we saw a lot of tweets, Maria, with the hashtag #SumbongKo, and they were talking about hashtag defective, or hashtag replaced, or hashtag VCM. So I think there are ways in which the unique properties of Twitter can help move conversation from the fringe to the mainstream. And I think that fundamentally in an elections context is what's possible. And I think in the Philippines, obviously you have news organizations and parties and candidates using Twitter. In the Philippines, I haven't seen, hashtags and tweets from ordinary people see such visibility in an election cycle the way I did this last cycle in the Philippines. And but I'm not surprised, again, given the way the country's embraced social media.
Well, in some ways, you said moving from the fringe to the mainstream. That's exactly what happened to Mindanao with the presidency of Rodrigo Duterte. Let me ask you about some of the negative effects. What have you noticed is completely new, has created new problems because of this kind of bottom-up groundswell?
Well, like with any new technology, where education is imperative at the front end. We've seen folks, of course, people are passionate, people are opinionated. We see this in all elections, and it leads to a conversation sometimes that some people might find objectionable. But by and large, I think what I saw, at least, and what we saw looking at the data, looking at the conversations that were particularly viral, there was positivity, there was humor, there was personality, There was pop culture. You know, only in the Philippines have I seen popular local celebrities like Vice Ganda or the local band Parokya, I think,
Parokya ni Edgar.
Yeah, you know, engaging in this election in an interesting way. I referenced the Durium hashtag. So I think in general, the collective personality of the Philippines shined on Twitter. Of course, there are opportunities for where people get passionate, etc. But I think in general, we saw a conversation that was really positive, engaging, and we saw, you know, the Philippines is one of our fastest growing markets, and we saw new users come to Twitter in big ways, in big droves during this election, and I suspect that'll continue.
What can we expect in the coming days from Twitter?
I think what we can expect is, you know, as you know, in the last year, we've really taken note. We've taken note in the Philippines. You know, I think I said when I came there last that, you know, we've noticed that the Philippines love Twitter and we love the Philippines back. And last year, we've gone deeper in our work with news organizations, including Rappler. We've gone deep in the entertainment space, of course, with a variety of properties and more. And I think what we're going to do is the company will continue to lean in and continue to focus on, one, how can Twitter be your front row seat in a news and political context where you're experiencing governance and the conversation now in a multi-dimensional way. But, you know, you'll see us continue to think about things like sports. You'll see us continue to think about things like entertainment. And how do we continue to onboard and ensure everyone is winning on Twitter and that the Philippines and its unique personality is shining on the platform. So stay tuned.
Fantastic, great. Rishi, we're going to be speaking with you again. I think this, you know, the canvas, when they actually open up the results and then try to match it with what the machines did, that begins on May 23. And then we're going to have a new president sworn in June 30th. So I'm sure we'll be speaking again. Thank you so much. Rishi Jaitley, he's coming to us live from Singapore. He runs the Middle East and Africa as well as Asia Pacific. Isn't that the whole world, Rishi?
I like to think so sometimes, but it is certainly the most interesting part of the world where I think you see a lot of innovation, a lot of energy, a lot of optimism and hope around the technologies you and I care about. So it's fun and looking forward to being back in the Philippines.
See you soon. Thanks so much,
Thank
Rishi.
You. Alrighty.